This is the new iFLight Nazgul Evoque F5 version 3. The Nazgul Evoque has been one of the very best bind and fly quads that you can buy, and iFLight have released a new version 3 not only with DJI O4, but they have completely redesigned this quad with pretty much everything apart from the motors being new. What we're going to do today is give you an overview of this quad. We're going to take a look at what's changed, get the lid off, have a look at the electronics, take it for a fly, and then at the very end, share with you my thoughts and try and find out if this is still the king of off-the-shelf FPV drones. Just before we get into this, I do want to be clear in saying iFLight did send me this quad to take a look at and review for free. However, they have not paid me to make this video. They've not seen this video before it's been published. And as always on this channel, my thoughts are entirely my own. So let's take a look at the aircraft first of all, and then we'll get it in the air and see how it performs. So to walk you around this new Nazgul, now this is the Evoque F5 version 3. It is the O4 bind and fly edition, so we have an O4 air unit built in. This new version 3 of the Evoque has a few really nice little features. The first being that it is a dual geometry frame in the sense of it comes preset up in the dead cat configuration that you see here. However, you can actually reconfigure this frame to be a true X if you want to. So rather than having to choose the configuration you want from the factory, now it will come preset up to dead cat, keeping those props out of view for your O4 filming. However, you can configure it to be a true X if you want to. As mentioned, this quad does come with the DJI O4 Pro system fitted as standard. You've got the camera mounted in this nice large aluminium camera cage. Either side of the camera, you can see there are some silicone pads that actually helps isolate the camera from the frame, reducing vibrations in your footage. You've then got your O4 Pro air unit mounted just behind the camera. Rather than mount it up the back with a long camera cable, instead they've mounted it up here, which gives us nice and easy access to the SD card and USB port over there. And instead they're using longer antenna cables which go to the back. There are two RP SMA antenna ports located at the rear of the quad, and they include two of their antennas with it as well. Just behind this, you will then see a GPS module. They do include an M10 GPS module as standard. That is held in place in this TPU bracket, which actually folds up underneath out the way when you're carrying the quad. And then also at the back, you can find there your XT60 battery connector. When it comes to battery, this quad is designed to be used on 6S, and it's fitted with the Zing 2 2207 motors, 1750 kV, pretty much the same motor that we've seen on all of the recent Nazguls. A really great and solid option, and again, it's just going to give you all of the performance that you need on a quad like this. When it comes to the antennas, iFLight have included two of their Albatross antennas. They are 5.8 GHz left-hand circular polarized antennas, and they are using RP SMAs. Now, it is just worth me mentioning that these antennas are rated for 5.8 GHz, although the specification says they can actually do 5.3 to 6 GHz. That is actually good because whilst in FCC mode, the DJI O4 air unit is only going to use 5.8, for CE users, it is possible it can go down to the 5.2 GHz band. I wouldn't worry about that with these antennas. I think you'll be fine. You also won't have the problem on these antennas when using them with the Goggles 3 around the DJI Remote. If you remember my other videos, the DJI Remote 3 with the Goggles 3 no longer transmits on 2.4 GHz. As a result of that, the 5 GHz antennas will be fine, although it is just worth me mentioning if you were to use this O4 with the Goggles 2 and the DJI FPV Remote version 2, you could potentially have issues. But I'm going to be honest with you, I say this all of the time, no one should be using the DJI Remote. Under no circumstances should you be using that remote. And as I've said, this is the Express RS version, and you want to choose something that gives you better range, better performance, but full control. Looking around, it still retains some of the other nice features that we've had on the Nazgul in the past. So you still have built-in LEDs into the base of the frame. You've got a built-in buzzer. As I've said, it's got GPS. This is the Express LRS version, but it is available in multiple different receiver options. And you've also then got these fully enclosed side panels that offer some additional protection for the electronics. Jumping inside and taking a look at the electronics, you will see that when you pop the lid off, that O4 Pro Air unit is actually mounted to the top plate of the quad rather than the bottom plate. So you've then got the camera inside with the cable that comes up, and then you have your two antenna cables which extend down to the RP SMAs at the rear. Electronics wise, this quad is built around the Borg Mini F7 stack from iFLight. This is based on the STM32 F722, uses the ICM 42688P gyro, the SPA06 barometer. It has 6 UARTs, 32 megs of onboard black box flash, 4 motor outputs, has all of the usual connections for LED and buzzer beeper pads. However, it does not have an I2C port that allows you to use it with the likes of GPS compasses. That then is obviously fitted to the ESC, which again is the Borg Mini. This is an STM G2 series ESC and is actually flashed with BL Heli 32 version 32.9. I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. You can see that ESC is just buried down there at the bottom. It's quite hard to see, and supports a maximum input voltage of 6S on the ESC, 8S on the flight controller, and 60 amp continuous from the ESC as well. Something else to note on this one is you might notice that the spark arrestor is missing. It is no longer in the cables. Now, this did catch me out at first, but it turns out, now I've actually got the full details for this drone, that it is built into the ESC. Rather than it being that separate PCB that was mounted between the input and the ESC itself, now they have mounted this directly onto the ESC board itself. Now, unfortunately, there isn't that much information about this. The iFLight website says very little. We do have renders of the ESC, but there are no real pictures. It is mentioned down here in the description that it does have integrated anti-spark filter, protects your equipment from voltage spikes, and it was shared with me from one of my users that they have mentioned this on Instagram, and this actually seems to be where we have more information about this than anywhere else. You can see that it actually shows integrated anti-spark filter. This basically looks like the same design as what they had on the separate board. It does appear that there are 2 FETs on the input of the ESC that allow the control of the power in, and what it appears is that iFLight have integrated this into the ESC rather than having it on a separate board. You can see there on this render, you've got these 2 big, what appear to be FETs there. I'm not going to tear this out of this drone today because I need this to be able to fly. However, what I'm going to say is the anti-spark filter as a separate device is gone, and it is now built into the ESC. I'm not sure how I feel about this overall, if I'm honest, but we'll have to see how it performs. Looking around, there are also a couple of other little things in here because this is the Express LRS edition. That Express LRS receiver is mounted down there under the battery pads at the bottom. Quite hard to show you, but it is there. That receiver actually appears to be the iFLight 500 milliwatt telemetry power receiver, which is available in either the 868-900 version or the 2.4 gigs version. That receiver is based off the SX series of chipsets, so it is not one of the new dual band receivers. It is a single antenna receiver, single band, so you choose the one you want at the point of ordering, and mine came pre-shipped with Express LRS firmware version 3.5.4. And then you've got these little LED control boards mounted on either side. Just some other things to mention, obviously with that O4 air unit mounted to the top plate, that is going to help with heat dissipation, but you also have some airflow channels here. So there is a channel underneath here that directs air out under the quad. So any air that comes in through the bottom of the camera can get expelled out there for helping cooling the camera. But any air that comes in the top is obviously going to be forced in towards this air unit. And there is an airflow path that goes all the way through the stack and out this back area here. As I mentioned, they do have these long antenna cables. These are a bit thinner than some of the ones that we've seen in the past. These are more like your DJI wires on the antennas that are going down to the RPSMA, and then everything else on this is pretty much plug and play. It's nice to see that they've actually moved up to locking connectors on this as well. So for instance, you've got a locking connector here for your digital VTX. If you wanted to use this version with DJI's remote control system, whilst I absolutely don't recommend it, you could. However, it is worth noting that the versions of this that come with a different receiver do not come with the harness that is wired for the DJI camera and DJI remote connection. So for instance, we have our UART and power on this wiring, but we don't have the connection for the remote. So if you wanted to convert this to use DJI, you would need to actually replace this cable, whereas the versions you buy of this with the DJI remote will have a different cable, making sure that S-Bus connection is pre-connected. We're going to take a look at what it will take to get the side panels off. These seem to just slide in. Oh, they do. It's not just seams. There we go. That then lifts up. We do have wires that go front and back, and there's a little connector on it. So I'm going to pop that off. That got glue on it. I think it has. So it's, yes, it's not I think it has. That's got some glue on it. And then I'm able to pop that out to the side. I just move the 040 unit. We can unclip the VTX connector as well. So to get that out the way, I don't want to undo the antennas, but we can just pop that there. So we've got a bit more access. Do the same on this side. I'm going to assume we can just pull up. There we are. We're going to have to be careful of these front LED wires, because there's not a lot of space on them. There we go. And then give that a tug. That releases. So that then allows us to fold these pieces out. Let me just zoom out a bit. There you go. So we've now sort of got the sides out completely. You've got these sort of aluminium bits in the four corners. These, they looked 3D printed originally, but they're not. They're mounted on top of the arms. The arm screws go into them. So actually, that's quite interesting. When you look at it, they're the standoffs is what they are, but they're machined aluminium standoffs that your bolts go through and in. So if I just flip this over upside down, that bolt and that bolt there both go into the standoff, and then the motor wires go down and through underneath. This will give us a bit more of a look at the motor soldering as well. We're going to want to get these nuts off, so let's have a look. We will undo the nuts on the stack and see how far we can get it out. There we go. Something else interesting to note, let's just come in closer. The cable between the ESC and the flight controller is a flat ribbon cable. Didn't spot that earlier. We're going to unclip the GPS. Here we go. And then we're going to pop out these two connections. They are actually glued, so they are fighting me a little bit. Okay, that one's come off that side. That's fine. We can tolerate that. They got clips. Gotta be very careful here. Oh, they have. I'm being silly. There's clips underneath. There we go. And then you can see, there we go, you've got that flex ribbon cable that goes down to the ESC. On top, there is then also this, what looks to be a plastic. I thought it was a metal sheet. It's a plastic sheet. Interesting. Not seen one of them on an iFLight quad before. And now we've got a much better look at that ESC. I'm not going to be able to get to the underside very easily. Looking round, we have our FETs that run around the sides. They are incredibly small. Look at them. Wow. I was not expecting them to be that small. You then got massive capacitors all the way around there. You've got your 2 shunt resistors, 2 smaller ones. It's not going to be easy for me to get to the underside of this, unfortunately, because it will involve unsoldering pretty much everything. I'm going to end up having to actually take off the standoffs, unsolder all the motors to be able to flip that up. I don't really want to do that at this point. But this has shown us an awful lot. The component density on this flight controller is very tight. You can see how much there is there. Very interesting with this flex cable. This does pose a little bit of a problem if you had to replace either one of these, because you're going to have to do them as a pair. You're not going to be able to do these singly. So if you had a burnt out ESC, you're basically putting a new stack in this unless you get the same ESC from iFLight. There are some compromises as a result of this being a highly integrated bind and fly drone, but very interesting. I would have liked to have seen if I could have got down to the bottom to be able to see that. No, we're not going to be able to do it. But look, hopefully that gives you an idea of how easy it is to work on. It isn't terribly hard. You can definitely get into it at least. But it is highly integrated. If you were to replace the stack with anything, you're going to need one that's going to fit. There isn't a huge amount of space in it. It is a specific shape as well. But yeah, other than that, very, very interesting. On top of all of that, there's some nice little other touches on this quad. So for instance, as I've said, we've got that aluminium camera cage up front, which should offer some nice strength, built-in GoPro mount, built-in battery pad, TPU pieces on the motors for offering some protection to the frame. This has the LED lighting built in, the plastic sides, as I've said, TPU back end that should offer some additional strength as well, dual battery straps. And whilst all of this is bells and whistles, it's all little things that come together to make the Nazgul one of the best 5-inch bind and flies that you can buy on the market today. The Nazgul has always been a great quad, and iFLight have just sort of taken it a step further here with this version 3 with that transformable frame. And if you were looking to get yourself a 5-inch bind and fly, there ain't much on the market that is better than this. When it comes to software, this quad comes with both Betaflight as well as BLHeli32 installed. Before we talk about that though, I just want to give you a warning, and that is, if you're going to buy this quad, do not be tempted to update the firmware as soon as you get it. This quad ships with a pre-configured target from iFLight that will allow the quad to work from the factory. Whilst I am going to recommend you make some setting changes, do not update the firmware. Don't be tempted to flash it, because it will lose the standard configuration and then you may be left in a position where you can't use it at all. My advice is, whenever you buy a bind and fly quad, fly it as it is, maybe make a few tweaks, and then if you want to update the version of Betaflight later, do it once you understand what that entails, and don't be tempted to do it as soon as you get the quad. When it comes to Betaflight, mine shipped with version 4.5.2. That is the latest version of Betaflight at the point of me recording this video. And as I've said already, that comes pre-configured. However, there are some things that you really must check before flying this quad. And the number one thing is the failsafe settings, because whilst this quad does come with GPS from the factory, the failsafe setting by default is set to drop, which means if you were to fly this quad and actually lose signal, instead of it returning to home like you might expect, instead it will simply fall from the sky. Now, you can configure this in Betaflight, and they have their new GPS rescue options, which is now improved and better than ever. I'm not going to go through this in this video. You should watch a dedicated video on GPS rescue. The most important things that you need to double check here is this setting down here, which is hover throttle. I haven't actually checked that at the point of recording. I'm going to do that, but this is something really important that you need to check before taking your quad for its first flights. With regards to things like the PIDs, all of this is already done. The only other things I would recommend you check is obviously your receiver is working correctly and you have all the correct stick movement. Your modes are behaving as expected. As standard, they have configured ARM up onto AUX 1, which is fine for Express LRS. We've got angle mode set all of the time. So again, you're going to want to configure this that you're able to actually put it into acro mode because it is going to force you into angle. And there is also a VTX power setting over here for that O4 air unit. That is on as standard to full, but you do want to check this because if you have this setting wrong, you are not going to be able to get any power to that O4 air unit. The last thing you're probably going to want to configure is your OSD as well. This is the standard configuration from iFLight. Not particularly ideal for me. However, it might be fine for you. For me, though, we're going to set this up the way I personally prefer it on all of my quads. Moving on to the ESC, it is shipped with BL Heli 32, 32.9. Now, like the HD0 ESC, this appears to be legitimate in the sense of it is working with the official public configurator. It is saying that it is actually the Blitz_G3 target with version 32.9 multi. As I said in previous videos around the HD0 ESC, this is not the same as what we saw with some of the test activator versions. However, we also have information to suggest that BL Heli are no longer licensing new firmware, so it is not known if this is running older versions of firmware that they had on older microcontrollers or if it is something else. Personally, I would have liked to have seen AM32. However, it is running BL Heli 32, it's 32.9. Unfortunately, though, you're not going to be able to upgrade that to 32.10, and 32.9 is the version you're going to be stuck with. So I'm down the beach getting ready to fly the Nazgul for the first time. We're going to be using it with the DJI Goggles 3. And as it is so bright here today, and don't be fooled into thinking it's a beautiful day, it is very nice, but it is incredibly windy. If I go up around that corner, it'll take my head off. But as it is so bright, I've also got a set of ND filters as well. iFLight make a set of NDs for the DJI O4 system. There's 4 filters in here. You've got a UV filter, ND8, 16 and 32 included in this kit, and they're designed to go straight onto the O4 air unit. Genuinely, I don't know how the footage is going to come out here today because it is so windy, but let's see how we get on. Okay, so we're all good to go. Everything is set up and working. We're in air mode, angle mode, that's fine. So we're ready to take off. There we go, everything is armed, all good. We're going to take it slowly for the first flight, just to make sure the aircraft is doing what we expect. It's always the case with a brand new aircraft to take it easy. I'll be honest, I usually like to fly them at the field, but it is so windy up there today, I didn't particularly think it was a good idea. So what I just want to do is just make sure everything is okay. Yeah, we are fine. Okay. Let's then take it out a little bit further and see how everything looks. I'm recording this intentionally with Rocksteady turned off, so you will be able to have a bit of a view of the footage non-stabilized in this weather, just to see how the wind is hitting it. So windy, right? We're virtually not moving that way there. I need to move. We have birds, 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 birds. Okay. Right, let's just come up around the corner and you will see the wind hit us instantly as I come up here. I'm almost not moving now. And then as soon as I turn, we're just going to pick up speed, which is to be expected. 04 looks phenomenal. Just get a little bit of height, just so you can see how the footage looks. 04 just looks beautiful, even in windy conditions. I'm not seeing anything through on the live footage. It looks smooth, exactly like we would expect. I mean, 4K 100, so it is going to be the nicest look to it. Start taking it down further. Oh, this battery is down. This one has dropped. Right, let's get this one in and swap it out. Okay, flight number 2. So now we know it is working a lot more as expected. We can try and do a bit of footage on it now. This wind down here today is making it a little bit challenging. Obviously that low sun as well. Although it is a beautiful day. Let's just come up and around. Show you some footage. Again, non-stabilized. I will then obviously pop it through gyro flow so you guys can have a look at what you think. I've always treated the Nazgul as a sort of cinematic 5-inch. Oh, I don't know if you saw that. Okay, this is not fun down here today. I'm under attack by birds. I need to stay away from that side. Oh, link quality, it's whinging. It's probably because I've got the antenna on the radio quite pointing at the ground. That's why that was whinging. Oh, my radio's now whinging about its battery. Oh, you're going to have that whinging now for the next 5 minutes until I stop. Overall, I have to say, initial flights feel good, smooth, really smooth on the sticks. Solid, no movement around whatsoever. Oh, man, I've got some test 6S's and they're all dying. I'm getting no flight time from those packs at all. Yeah, right, okay, I think we need to bring this one in. That's sagging too much. I'm not going to risk losing an aircraft over them. Okay, so this flight, I now have Rocksteady turned on. Ooh, was a bit of a rough takeoff. I didn't have my fingers right on the radio, so as I pushed the throttle up, I sort of jerked. But yeah, so this now has Rocksteady turned on, so it'll give you an idea of what the footage is like with Rocksteady. Trying to slow down coming down the beach because it's so windy. It's just coming down so fast. It's hard to do it slow so you can see the footage, but we will spin around into the wind and then you will be able to see it upwind then. There we go. So that should... Overall, I have to say it flies really nice. Nazgul is such a good quad. It really is. Oh, we've got no battery on this again. This wind is destroying the batteries. I'm not going to have a huge amount of flight footage for people on this overview. I'm not sure what this one's going to end up as, simply because of the weather. Wow, that is some noise. But overall, I have to say what I've seen so far I like. What you've just seen there is my initial flights with the aircraft. Unfortunately, the weather is holding me back from doing a lot more flights. Literally, today was the first day that it hasn't been raining. It was very windy, but it wasn't wet. So I shot down the beach and got a couple of flights on it. I think I've had about 6. You've got 3 there, and I did a couple more without showing you just to check everything over. And I have to say, this aircraft is once again living up to the Nazgul name. iFLight have done an incredible job here. It is so smooth, not just in the way it flies, but the footage. How stable was that? My intention was to actually record it without Rocksteady, but in normal mode wide, so I could use Gyroflow and show you both. But I'm not going to bother. It was so stable, even in that windy conditions. I'm not going to show you how good it can be because I don't need to. You can stabilize this perfectly. I've clearly done a great job on the tuning of this aircraft. I also though just want to say it flies incredibly smoothly. It's tuned nicely. I haven't got enough flight time to give you sort of out and out impressions on every little quirk. But overall, I have to say, I'm incredibly impressed. And once again, I think iFLight are taking the top spot with this on what is the best off-the-shelf bind and fly 5-inch FPV quad. It certainly isn't the cheapest, and I'll come on to price in a minute. You are definitely paying for a premium product here, but you are also getting a premium product as well. Genuinely, it is very, very good indeed. Now, as I said, price is a factor on this quad. You can get this obviously directly from iFLight. It is available on their website, and you can actually configure it in multiple different ways as well. Currently, it depends on the version you choose, will depend on the price. So for instance, the Nazgul Evoque F5 without GPS is currently $599, or if you get it with the built-in GPS, it goes up to $638.99. That is the version without receiver. You do pay a little bit more if you want the Express LRS receiver, but you can also get it with TBS Crossfire as well. So for instance, if I was to spec this out with GPS, with the iFLight Express LRS receiver, the total price comes in at $654.99. So in the end, this is an incredibly good quad. I have 0 complaints, but there are just 2 things I am going to highlight. Number 1 is that BL Heli 32 thing. As I've said already, ships a 32.9. I would have preferred AM 32. I can't comment on the legitimacy on that side of it because it all appears to be correct, but we're well over a year since BL Heli 32 shipped, and we're aware of the mess around HD0 and other stuff, which brings into question, is any BL Heli 32 ESC actually legitimate now? I'm not going to not recommend it because of that, but I am highlighting it because I highlight this with every product that uses it, and I would have preferred to see AM32. And I do just want to mention about that spark arrestor. This is a mindset thing and not a real technical thing. iFLight used to have that spark arrestor separate. I liked the fact it was separate because you could take it out if you didn't like it. It's now built into the ESC. There's part of me that doesn't like having the power to the quad going through FETs. But then again, it's complete nonsense because the power to your motors goes through FETs. It's literally FETs that are controlling the motors. It's the same as a DJI Smart Battery, basically. They're controlling the starting up slowly rather than it just kicking in. However, there's a bit of me that would have preferred that spark arrestor to be separate. It feels like an additional bit that I don't necessarily need. I have seen some of these spark arrestors fail. When it was a separate box, you could take it out. Now it isn't a separate box. That would mean you'd have to replace the ESC. But I'm probably being paranoid, and I absolutely would not make that a reason not to buy this quad. I would recommend this as the go-to bind and fly for anyone. And actually, I'm going to say this now again. Once again, iFLight have built what is the king of off-the-shelf bind and fly quads with the Nazgul Evoque F5 version 3. In my opinion, they once again retain the top spot, although, as I have shown, it does come at a premium. It's a top-end quad at a top-end price, but man, what a quad it is. Now, I hope you have found this video useful. If you have, please do consider checking out the links to my Patreon as well as buying me a coffee. It is only through the support of my Patreons am I able to keep making content on this channel. And if you'd like to support us, please do consider checking it out. Finally, I just want to say a massive thank you to iFLight for sending this over. What a quad. Genuinely, what a quad. If you're in the market for a bind and fly 5-inch, this has got to be number one to look at on your list. Anyway, that's it for me. Look after yourself. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.